music fans, my name is Kathy Rankin and thanks for joining us today, and I am very excited about the interview we're doing today because I'm joined by two incredible musicians from the band Fifth Angel, Ken Mary, drummer and producer, original founding member, and Steve Carlson, who is the lead vocalist and who is just owning that role. And you guys, they have a brand new album, When Angels Kill, coming out. It drops June 16th on Nuclear Blast. So welcome, you guys. Thanks for stopping by and talking to us.
Thanks so much for having us.
So we have a lot to talk about with the new music, but before we get going on the details, Ken, I want to start with you since you've been there from the beginning of Fifth Angel. And how did the band regroup, and why did you guys decide to do this fourth album?
Sure. Well, I'd like to give a shout out to Oliver at Keep It True. Fifth Angel started playing at the Keep It True festivals around 2010. And that was sort of the first inkling that we had that maybe Fifth Angel as a band was a lot bigger in Europe than we had imagined. And we had, since that time, we started putting together music. And Jaap, Wagemaker over at Nuclear Blast, heard some of the songs and signed the band. But basically it was, what got us back into it was really just kind of meeting some of the fans and seeing the energy and excitement that the fans had about the band. And that sort of got us back into writing new music.
So then, Steve, how did you enter the picture? How did you hook up with the guys and become part of the band?
Let's see, bribery.
What did they bribe you with? That's the question.
No, I bribed them.
Look,
Oh, you bribed them.
No, we had a friend, actually a mutual friend, Mike Gabi, who
I know Mike.
He mentioned my name to the guys, and they were looking for a singer to do a tour to cover Ted's parts, and then their guitar player at the time was going to sing and play his parts. So I came on board for that reason. They interviewed a few people, and I got the job. And,
so what were you doing before Fifth Angel? What's a little bit about your background, because some people may not know.
Oh, just I have an original band here too in Arizona. Yeah, so I played in an original group. We've been together since 2012. So yeah, just writing material and singing in this local area.
Well, this is kind of a cool connection.
Well, actually, there's a even
You want to talk about my
there's a
disco
deeper.
background?
I was going to talk about his disco background. No,
Oh, no, I want to hear about that.
No, actually, I was going to talk about the fact that we're all from Seattle, and actually Steve was in the music scene in Seattle back when Fifth Angel was starting in around 1984 or 1985. So what's ironic is we all kind of grew up in the Seattle music scene, and then we didn't find him till I was living down in Phoenix, and he was working in Phoenix. So it's kind of a cool connection that we have that we're all from Seattle.
Yeah. And another band, Queensryche, was in Seattle around the same time. Did you guys ever run into the same circles of people with those guys?
I did.
Not me, but yeah, Ken.
Yeah, sure. We knew, we certainly knew of Queensryche, and as a matter of fact, I remember talking to some of the guys in the band before they released their first EP, and they were just saying that they had recorded at the studio, and they were excited about it, and said, well, they spent their own money, and they said, well, it's just money, and sure enough, it ended up coming out and just being huge. So, but yeah, the scene there with Queensryche, Metal Church, Heir Apparent, Fifth Angel, I think there were some other bands too that were sort of like at the core of the metal scene in Seattle.
Right.
That's before, ironically, grunge took off around '92 and sort of did a good job of wiping a lot of that out. But,
Right.
but
Is that why you guys had a bit of a break then? Because there are a lot of Fifth Angel fans still around from back on your first album, and I remember that album because I saw Queensryche open for Metallica, and I think it was 88 or 89. And that led me, I was there for Queensryche, not Metallica. And that led me to Fifth Angel. And your first album, when it came out, it made a pretty big splash, and everybody thought, oh, this is the next big thing. And you guys did get a lot of attention, and it was killer music. But then you guys, after your second album, had a pretty big break. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think there were a few things that happened, but certainly the grunge era kicking in had a lot to do with it from a business perspective. I mean, nowadays you have things like YouTube and you have Instagram and Facebook. So if you want to stay in touch with your fans, you can really do that now, even if you didn't have a record company. And back then, we did lose our deal They didn't want to pick up another option after the Time Will Tell album, just because the scene had changed so dramatically, and that sort of put the, it sort of closed the door on all that for us. So yeah, there was certainly a huge period where there was nothing going on with the band, and that's why for us it was exciting to see that, wow, there's really really a fan base in Europe for us still, and that was a great thing to find out.
Right, and so then you guys did The Third Secret, and it was very well received. So is that what led to doing the fourth album, the new album?
Yes. Yeah, The Third Secret, that was sort of our first album. I think at the time it was the first album we had done in 28 years or something like that.
Crazy.
So yeah, it was a little bit of time.
That's a bit of a break. But I mean,
a little bit of a break.
I mean, you were touring with Alice Cooper. You did House of Lords. I mean, you were doing a lot of other projects.
Sure, I was, but as far as the band, that was the first album we did in I think it was 28 years at the time, and we were nervous about it. We were very concerned because we knew that the first two albums were considered classics in Europe, and you're fighting at that point nostalgia, which is a very powerful force. Mm-hmm. And so we were like, how are we going to make a record that people are, not going to immediately hate because it's different?
Right.
It's going to be different, 28 years later. And but somehow I think we really were successful in making music that still sounded like Fifth Angel. It was still exciting and still moved us, and it was exciting to us. So I think that really, I think that's why it was received very well. Mm-hmm. And but I will say that most of the pressure for us was on Third Secret. After that long of a period of not releasing any music and then having to release an album, that's very stressful. This album was less stressful because of The Third Secret.
Well, and Steve, that's when you entered the picture, right? Was right around the time of The Third Secret?
After it came out in October, November is when I started. So.
And so when you came into it, did you feel any of that pressure, knowing that you had to come in and fill some pretty big shoes, and that inevitably there's always going to be people that compare you to the original singer, Ted Pilot, or even the singer on the other albums. So how did you prepare for that? What was your mindset coming into this?
Do a good job. Do a good job.
You're such a simple, straightforward kind of guy.
Well, I love the music, and I love Ted singing on it, and my job at the time was to emulate Ted as best as I could and still be me, right?
Yeah.
And bring that energy, maybe even bring more, if possible, energy to it. I didn't find out that I was going to actually do all of, the Third Secret songs at the next show in February until like a month before, when we lost our guitar player at that time.
Well, you've jumped in and you've really owned it. And I mean, I've got to say your vocals are unbelievable on the album. So let's talk about the album, because Ken, what were you thinking? This is your fourth album. And
what were you thinking?
What were you thinking? It's a
thinking?
double vinyl, almost 70 minutes of music concept album. So, I mean, that's a pretty ambitious thing to tackle. What inspired that?
Well, we were originally talking about doing a concept record back around The Third Secret, but we just didn't have the time to do it. Mm-hmm. And then, so this time, I talked to the label, I talked to Jaap, and he goes, it'd be really cool if you did a double vinyl. And so at the time, we thought, wow, that is a really cool idea. Let's do a double vinyl. And then we got into the process of actually writing it and trying to figure out how, like how many songs we needed and how much time we'd have.
What were you thinking?
And then it was like, what were you thinking exactly at that point? But so it did turn into a little bit more of a project than we anticipated. But like, we feel very happy. We feel like we really crafted each and every song and really tried to make it something exciting for the listeners and also for the Fifth Angel fans. We did something that I think is unique. I don't think anybody's done it before. We took all the concepts, sometimes even song titles, sometimes even lyrics from the previous three albums, and we wove them into a cohesive story for When Angels Kill. And so when somebody's listening to this, and if they're a fan, they'll hear little snippets. They'll hear a song title, or they'll hear a lyric that they've heard before that ties into the story and actually references them back to the previous albums. So if they want to find out more about the story, they can actually go back and listen to songs from the other albums.
Oh, that's very cool. So tell me about the process of recording a concept album. how do you start? Because there is a definite storyline to this entire album. And I was lucky enough to get an advance copy, and I listened to the full thing. And you really have to sit down and get in that zone, because it is heavy, and there's a lot of big themes in this record. So how did you guys come up with the storyline and the distinct characters? Tell me a little bit about that process.
Well, we actually had a framework of a story that that we had worked on, and we sent it around to the whole band, and everybody looked at it. And a funny story, I remember our bass player John, he got the story, and he goes, "Is there another? Do you have like any other ideas?" Do you have some different ideas? He wasn't really, he wasn't
sure?
necessarily a big fan of the story. I mean, it was a complicated story, but if you
Who came up with that framework?
Well, the framework, it was, well, I would say it was probably mostly me, and there were some other, but honestly, you know, the reason I say mostly me is because the concepts were taken from the previous 3 albums, and just trying to thread some of the themes. Like if you look what we were talking about as teenagers, which is really funny. I mean, we were talking about things like terrorism and betrayal and war and deception in media and all these different things.
Good versus evil, power.
And it's still applicable today, like 100% applicable. So it was really cool to look back and review all these lyrics, and then just kind of pull from those and then try to weave them into the story. So I guess in a sense, you know, I was the one who had the idea of doing that. But in terms of, you know, who wrote the story, well, those previous albums kind of wrote the story. So I think we all had a pretty good hand in that, if that makes sense.
So how did you overcome John's hesitation?
Well, we just started making the record, actually. We just started making the record, and he heard some of the songs, and he's like, wow, you know, this is, you know, he was very excited about it. And so the more material we started doing and the more the songs started coming together, he just heard it, and he was excited like we were. You know, I think we were all feeling like something really special was happening. Like musically, we were happy with it. And I think, you know, I always say this in interviews, but if we're happy with it and we're feeling excited about it, then we kind of know we're onto something. Because you know, if you're ever working on a song and you're like, well, I don't really like this song, don't put it on a record.
Right.
You know, if you don't like it as the artist, why should anybody else like
Exactly.
it? So we have always tried to do this as a philosophy for this band, and really almost any band that I've been in. We always try to make sure that we make ourselves happy first, and this is something we're excited about. And then if we're excited about it and we love it, then hopefully we'll find 1 to 7 million people that will also like it.
They're out there. They're going to love it.
1 to 7, 8, 9 million people.
Well, Steve, so what did you think when you saw the first explanation of the story? What were you thinking going in of how you were going to, because you're kind of the voice of the characters, really. How do you bring that into the recording?
Well, you know, when I first saw the, what do you call it? What was it? The transcript?
Synopsis?
Synopsis, there you go, thank you. My words.
Synopsis.
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 It's a very formal.
When I first saw that, I thought it was,
It's a $10 word.
Yeah.
I thought it was brilliant, actually. It's brilliant, really. I mean, it's awesome.
It is.
Because, you know, seeing it all interplay, and then seeing all the songs that I really fell in love with as I'm learning them, you know, kind of come to life in those words as well. You know, basically all the songs, I think, are represented in this album, which is really quite a feat.
Do you as a vocalist have to connect personally to the meaning of the songs, the subject matter?
100%.
For you to be able to really sell it?
Absolutely. And the meaning of the songs, for me, it's really easy for me to do that, because I'm really behind the actual meaning that is, you know, the deeper meaning than just the surface. And there's more depth in these songs than...
There's a lot of depth. So let's talk about that a little bit. How do you want people to listen to this album, and what were you guys wanting to say? Because these are very heavy songs. There is a lot of layers and symbolism to it. And as I was going through and listening to all the tracks, every single song, I found myself saying, wow, I mean, this is talking about this happening today. This is talking about this. And It's kind of wild.
crazy.
So tell me your perspective on that.
Sure. Well, originally, we were thinking that this album, when we were starting to write it, we figured this be like way in the future. This would be something that would happen because. Do we want to talk about the story at all?
Yeah. Talk about the story without giving too much of it away.
Okay, the story really centers around the main character, the protagonist. His name is Phoenix. He's a young man, and he's seeing these global events that are changing his life. We're seeing the rise of a global dictator, a guy named Dion Profontis, who is not... he will use force to enforce his ideas and what he thinks the world should be like. And he's not shy about doing that. So there's two other characters, Lana, and who ends up being Phoenix's best friend, Dylan, that are forming a resistance, or they're part of a resistance that's sort of happening globally because people are seeing what's happening, and there is kind of a resistance to it. And of course, in this case, resistance can be fatal for you. So the story basically is going through Phoenix's and his friends' fight to survive and thrive in this environment where you have crazy events happening globally. You've got a global tyrant. You've got natural disasters happening. You've got terrorism happening. It's just a lot of, actually sort of like our world today, but maybe on a more expansive scale. So that's really what the story's about. There's also a love story that happens in there, and I will say that it does not end well. Does not end well. It's actually kind of,
Not a super lighthearted album.
Well, it's probably the darkest Fifth Angel album in terms of the heaviness of it. It's a heavy story. But when we were writing it, we certainly felt like, wow, this is going to be really far in the future. And then once COVID hit and all of that happened, it was sort of like, you're starting to see some things that you had not seen previously. Like, for instance, the global governments all working together on something.
Did that give you guys pause when that happened?
It sure did for me. I went, wow, that to me, that's almost the hint of a global system.
Right.
Where all the governments are all working, connecting with each other and doing the exact same thing at the exact same time. So that was kind of something that was kind of, I guess, timely for this record.
Interesting. So in that process, because COVID did hit, how did you guys record? How did you actually physically record? Did you do things digitally and send it back and forth like a lot of people do these days? Or did you get in the studio together? What was the actual recording process for you?
Well, it was a little weird. I remember when Steve came in, we would not see each other. He would go into the tracking room, and I'd be in the control room, and we would literally, never be in the same room while we were recording initially. Mm-hmm. And then as things went on, and I think people became more knowledgeable about COVID and then understanding that, depending on what your conditions were, that the fatality rate was maybe not as high as what everybody thought. Then we were a little more comfortable, working around each other.
But was that challenging for you guys to do it that way?
No. Not really.
Did you, at any point, were all the musicians in the room together, or?
No, actually, we not all together. No, but I don't think it was really a challenge. I mean, as far as the songwriting, I mean, usually you think of the songwriting is the part where you sort of need to be together.
Yeah.
And we were doing a lot of that via Zoom and writing over that medium, and we found it to actually be very effective. Like, we didn't feel like we were missing anything by doing that, if that makes sense.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So tell me about the sound of the album, because I noticed listening, and I'm not a producer, so I don't even know how to quite articulate what I'm hearing, but there's a really distinct sound, like the guitar tones, all of it. You're the producer. Was there anything you were doing different on the sound and the actual engineering and mixing of this album versus previous?
He can't hear it anymore.
Because you listen to it so much?
Because I listen to it so much.
He can't hear it anymore.
I never want to hear this record ever again.
Well, we talked about that.
Neither one of us can hear it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's got, when you're that close to it.
Why don't you tell us what you hear?
Well, it just has a very distinct, I don't know, the guitars, the tones are really cool. I think it's very crisp and clear sounding, but heavy at the same time. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Well, we were trying to get something that
cool.
really felt aggressive, and that you could hear everything, but it all sounded like everything was kind of in your face.
Yeah.
You know, like you hear the guitars, you hear the drums, you hear the bass, you hear the vocals, everything's there, but it's kind of reaching out and grabbing you.
That's
you know?
exactly right.
That's kind of what we wanted. We wanted to like grab people, you know, with the sonics of it, you know, just from a sonic perspective, and hopefully we achieved that.
Did you employ any techniques in the studio, like anything different that you used equipment-wise or gear-wise for this that gave it a specific sound?
Not really. I mean, pretty much used the same equipment that you saw. I mean, I know you've been to Sonic Fish Productions, and yeah, we just used the same equipment. I think it really was more a question of the musicianship and just the approach, and just taking a very, like, we kind of knew what we wanted the album to sound like before we even started. We said, hey, we want to kind of harken back to the first album maybe a little bit more, and we want to be real aggressive though, but we want to kind of update the music and make it, you know, we've all grown as musicians and everything, so we want to make it sound like, hey, we've grown, and at the same time we wanted to capture a little bit of maybe the darkness of that first album as well.
Well, I think you guys achieved it, because as I was listening to it, and I decided to go back and listen to all the albums again. Like I said, I knew Fifth Angel back then and loved the music because I'm a sucker for a concept album. But I love every record. Every record I think is different, but I feel like every album you guys have just gotten stronger and stronger. And this one, it just knocks it out of the park for me. I think fans are going to be really excited when they hear it. Were you guys feeling that?
I think I was excited when it was finished and we could listen to the whole thing as a concept record. The first time I did that, I felt like we kind of achieved something special and different than maybe, you know, what we had done in the past. And I've had some interviews, especially from a lot of the major outlets in Europe, and you know, a lot of people have said, "Hey, this is my favorite Fifth Angel album of all of them," which is to me.
I think so too.
Well, to me, that's kind of a stunning thing, because it's hard to fight. You know, again, the nostalgia. You know, like when you grow up with, let's say, an album. You know, I know you're a Rush fan. I'm a Rush fan.
Right.
But you know, your favorite Rush albums are probably the ones that you listened to when you were young.
Originally, right?
Yeah, and that introduced you to the band, and it's the same thing with Fifth Angel. Like, I always think, well, the fans are probably going to love those first two albums the most, and so it's amazing to me that someone can hear an album and it's a new album, and they go, wow, this is my favorite.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's a huge compliment. I'm just like, wow, thank you so much, because you know, that's what we're trying to do. You're always trying to make your greatest album ever.
Right.
You know, that's the goal, and for someone to recognize it, even though, you know, just like what I was saying about nostalgia, even recognizing it above that, to me is very, it's very nice to hear that.
Well, I think you guys achieved it. And Steve, I have to say, you're a big part of this, because I think what you have brought into this album is you have even though you were somewhat trying to emulate the sound from the earlier albums, you have your own voice. And what I love about it is you have all the qualities of what a great front person has to have, the power and the range, but you've got this like raw grit to your voice. So talk a little bit about, I don't know if you have any specific vocal techniques or training, or is that just a God-given gift?
Well, I did. I've sang my whole life, so I've sang other artists and emulated those artists, and I really get behind some of those dirtier sounds, right? And so,
who were some of your biggest influences?
Well, I like AC/DC, I like Bryan Adams, in those kinds of grit kind of sounds. But I really like music that has got more of a, a style that is very popular, if you will. So I like all of that, and I just try to be me in no matter what I'm doing. So I was blessed to find that, I could actually take the Ted Pilot sound and then take the Kendall sound and make that happen in my area, and then also basically have my sound here utilizing those kind of same things.
Yeah, it seems like it fits really, really well. So let's talk about the videos, because you also brought a lot to the videos, and I love it. So you guys have released 2 videos from the album. You've released When Angels Kill and Resist the Tyrant. And they're both killer. Everybody out there should go watch the videos right after this interview, because I think having that visual along with the sound is really powerful. And you really seem to embody an actual character in the videos, where sometimes you see videos and people are just like, okay, I'm gonna sing and play my instrument and just try to look like a cool rock guy. But you came in with this whole persona and this whole character as part of the story. Did you put a lot of thought into this ahead of time, and what was the inspiration for that?
I put absolutely zero thought into it.
Come on.
I didn't. I brought things I thought would be cool, and then when I got there,
So wait, you brought
I brought a bunch of things, like clothing and things and swords.
Okay,
and
so I
things.
made Steve bring a prop. From my favorite prop of the video is this sword, and it's about how long? 4 feet?
Probably around 4.
Okay, and this is the real thing, right?
Yeah, that's the real thing.
Did you just have this laying around your house, or did you go out and get this? How did this come about?
No, we do incantations at home, and
I mean, there's nothing more metal
we say
than this.
And having a sword, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
the south, the north, the east, the west. We draw the thing.
did
on the
you know
ground.
he was gonna bring all this stuff to
I
you?
had
He had
no
no
idea.
idea. He had no
I had no idea. But when I saw it, I was like, that's going to look cool. I mean, we're like, and then when we were doing the video, we're like, yeah, we've got to put him on a throne because he's got a sword. And
I mean,
so,
and it just kept going. Like, I
Yeah.
think you've got some sort of apparatus in the second video, and I'm waiting.
It's the microphone stand.
Oh, is that the microphone
It's a stand.
Well, that's pretty cool.
That's all it is. And
we
it-
need
what-
to trade notes on who did that.
Well, I built it, and it's a metal pole.
Oh, you
It's-
built it?
Yeah, it's a metal pole, and it screws into the stand part, and it screws out, and then it actually comes apart so that it can go on a plane.
See, now you're in trouble, because now that I know you can do that, I'm going to make you make my mic stand for my gigs. So, okay, so
Well, I have.
That's the least you can do now.
you
I'm
owe
not.
me.
I'm not that
yeah,
talented.
we owe her, so you have to do that.
Well, you are talented.
All right.
So I think the sword needs its own Instagram account, because these props are kind of becoming their own characters. So what did the guys think when you were filming this video? Did you guys have to get into character? Like, how was the whole video process? Because that's a big part of now marketing your music.
Well, for us, I mean, the video really, for most of us, it's just a question of performing the song. Steve obviously has a little bit different job because he's the singer, and he has to really kind of emote and kind of, like you said, portray the character.
Which he does very
Which he
well.
does excellently, yeah. As a matter of fact, going back to his sound, I think there was a little bit of confusion. He's not trying to sound like Ted or Kendall on the record. I mean,
Right.
he live, obviously he has to sort of, model his voice a little bit, trying to emulate Ted and then emulate Kendall. But on the record, he just did his own thing, and it sounds, in my opinion, like I think it sounds amazing.
It does.
And I've
it's
heard
amazing.
that from a lot of interviewers that with interviews that we've done, they just said they just think he did an incredible job, and I
Yeah.
agree with that. He
I
just
do
did a
too.
fantastic job. But as far as getting ready for the videos, I think for most of us it was just performing, and then Steve brought a lot to the table, and I think he made it more interesting with his dynamic presence.
I do too. I think the fact that he owns it so much and it shows real passion for it, I think sells it a lot more and really brings the person watching into the story.
Well, it was spontaneous. I mean, honestly, I didn't have anything worked out. Zero worked out. I just did it based on the subject matter.
And isn't it in life, sometimes that's the best way,
yeah.
when you don't overthink something. So speaking of live, how are you guys going to replicate this live? I mean, physically, it's very demanding. Ken, your drums are monstrous in this album, and anybody who knows you knows I know you're humble, but you're one of the most prolific drummers in music. And you have so much you're doing at such a rapid pace, and you physically are just all out on almost every track. How do you guys replicate this live? It's going to be demanding.
Well, what's interesting is, we noticed that in our recent show at the Kit Festival in Germany, that the two toughest songs were the songs off of this record, because they are physically more demanding than
Yeah.
the previous material. But as far as how you prepare for that, I mean, I think the way you prepare for that is obviously we try to stay in good shape and take care of ourselves, and that really has a lot to do with your ability to perform. I mean, honestly, it was a little bit tough the last show because we were still jet lagging. It was our first show that we had played in a few years, and that's always challenging too. I always, there's video posted of it. I know, Steve. But it's
how much sleep did you get? I don't know. How much sleep did you get?
Not
did you get enough sleep?
Not enough. Not enough sleep.
How about today? What was your how many? What time did you get up?
Yeah, we were always quizzing each other. Hey, how do you feel? But when it's weird because you're shooting these. Well, not shooting the video, but they're basically shooting the show.
Right.
And it's the first show. It'd be like somebody going, "Hey, we're going to broadcast the first show of our tour." Like nobody does that.
Yeah.
Nobody's crazy enough to do that,
Right.
except for us.
Well, there you go.
We're crazy enough to do that.
That's why you guys are together. But these shows, when you have done them, have been very well received. Talk about the difference between the European market and the American market.
Well, I think in the European market, the difference is that they never left the metal scene. Like, if you think about the music that really took off in Europe, like the grunge era, I don't think was really that successful in Europe.
Over there.
And they don't get a lot of the, different pop and rap and things over there. Metal is probably maybe the biggest music style in Europe. So
huge.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. Wacken is 80,000 people. Like the festivals are huge. Hellfest is 150,000 people. Or it's just huge festivals that you don't see in the United States, which is really weird to me. Like I don't understand how a music style could be so huge in Europe and then so not. I think it's a little dampened in the United States, and I think that has a lot to do with just the culture and media and things like that.
Commercialism and stuff. So are you guys going to tour with the album?
Well, certainly. We're going to try and play as many live shows as we can. It is, as everybody knows now, touring is a little bit difficult in Europe for American bands just because the cost. You fly over there, it's $8,000 when you step off the plane.
Yeah.
So, right there, that's a lot of merch.
Yeah.
So that's a lot in merch sales. So you do have to account for that, but we're looking at what we can set up in the fall, and hopefully we'll be setting up some fall shows.
Awesome. And then are you going to do anything in the States as well?
We have talked about it, but it's a possibility we'll be doing some shows in Phoenix, Tucson, El Paso. We're thinking of doing like a little regional run.
And just kind of see how everything is. You're already getting, the album isn't even officially out yet. And the video has, When Angels Kill has close to 300,000 views already. So, word is getting out. I've seen a lot of news in some of the music editorials talking about the album. So, and there's a lot of, and I read the comments. Do you guys read the comments?
We do.
Do you read?
We do read the comments.
They're 99% positive. There's always those funny ones.
We need the bad ones. We need more bad comments.
No, we don't. We don't.
No. He doesn't want the bad comments.
We don't need more bad comments. But
they're primarily positive.
They are. They're overwhelmingly positive,
Yeah.
which is great. And then you kind of know that it's real because there are some people that will comment negatively and. Which, I actually asked the label, I said, well, do you guys clean these comments up? And they said, no, we don't touch them. So, it was great to see that, it's genuinely being received really well.
Exactly.
So yeah, we're very excited about that.
Yeah, the videos are just great. And, tell me a little bit about the guitars, because the other members aren't here for the interview, but I want to make sure we talk about them.
Sure.
You've got Jim Dofka on lead guitar, and he is absolutely shredding on these tracks. He's amazing.
He is. He's on fire.
He's on fire. So tell me a little bit about him and the other guys that are, you got John Macco on bass, of course, and he's been in the band since 87?
I think earlier than that, I think 86.
Yeah, so, and he's great. But tell me about who else contributed.
Well, there was a great number of musicians that contributed on this album. We had, as you mentioned, Jim Dofka, Ed Archer, of course, who's an original member.
Yeah, people love him.
We had my friend Steve Conley from Flotsam and Jetsam assisted us in some of the rhythm tracks. Actually, Ed hurt his hand at one point and was unable to play. So we had some interesting things happen along with COVID. We had a friend of ours, Brent Barker, help out. We
I mean,
had
he's the one in the video, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, and you said he had to actually learn
note for note.
note for note everything,
Yeah.
and he killed
Because
it
Jim
too.
couldn't come out. He was having to take care of his elderly mother. And so we just ran into all kinds of wacky scenarios in this instance, and we had deadlines that we had to meet. So we just did whatever we had to do to meet the deadlines. But the way I described it in interviews, I said, well, people are familiar with Halloween, and they have a thing called Pumpkins United, and they had like 4 guitar players and 3 singers, and all these different guys that had played in the band. And this is sort of like Angels United. We had the core guys, and Steve and Ed and John and myself, and then Steve Conley helping out, and Jim Dofka and Ethan Brosh co-wrote on some of the songs.
Right.
And we just basically, the whole Fifth Angel family helped out to make this record what it is, which I think honestly really helped make it turn into something special.
I think so too. I think it actually added a lot, and it is just a great album. So, final takeaways. What do you want people to take away from the new music?
Do you want me to answer that?
Go ahead, Ken.
All right, well, you were delaying, so
Yeah.
I figured. Well,
I thought you were going to say something really profound.
I know, I was working on it, but
I think it would be
didn't come yet.
nice, I think as an artist, it's always, like, we loved Kit, and we loved meeting the fans and signing things, because I feel like as an artist, there's no greater compliment than someone, actually is investing their money and their time into listening to what you do, and it's a great honor, and we never take that lightly, and we will never take that lightly. So I think probably the great way I think for somebody to receive this would be to listen and enjoy it. If they listen and they love the songs and they love the story, and it moves them emotionally, I think that would be that's obviously what you're trying to do as an artist. You're trying to move people emotionally. So if we achieve that, then I feel that's successful.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
let me just ask one last thing about you guys personally, because people like to always know a little bit about you personally. Who are your top 2 or 3 favorite bands? I want you both to answer that. And then if you weren't doing music, what are your other top 2 or 3 passions in life?
Top favorite bands for me would be, well, I do like AC/DC a lot, and Led Zeppelin would be
that's a good one.
my top 2. And in life, probably a teacher, mentor, coach in life to others and help them grow, and that would be what I would do.
That's
Which
awesome.
I'm doing now too. So yeah.
Great. What about you, Ken?
Favorite bands, I would think, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Metallica. I mean, those are the kind of bands, we all sort of grew up with. And I'd say still are an influence on us today. I mean, certainly Rush was a huge band.
I was gonna be mad if you didn't say Rush.
Yeah, I was going to say Rush. I didn't want you to be mad at me. And then, of course, Led Zeppelin, but a funny story, I didn't discover them till the later 80s. I don't know if I told this story.
Oh, that's right.
I'll tell this story real quick. I don't know if we have time, but we
Yeah, we have
can
time.
always edit it out.
Yeah.
But I was on a flight, and I had just purchased a portable CD player, which back in the day was a kind of a big deal. And I bought Led Zeppelin 4, and so I'm on the flight and we're going to Europe with House of Lords, and I'm listening to this Led Zeppelin 4, and I'm going, this is unbelievable. So I'm going up to the other guys going, you guys, you need to check this out. This is unbelievable. And they go, oh, you just discovered who Led Zeppelin is, huh? And I went, yeah, I guess I did.
You might have to turn in your musician's
I know, I might have to.
Well,
of course, I knew Stairway to Heaven. You
Yeah.
know, like we all knew Stairway to Heaven and things like that. But I was into Kiss and Aerosmith and those guys. So I didn't really, Led Zeppelin was just a tiny bit before me. You know what I'm saying? Like before my time, so to speak. And so when I did discover them, I was like, man, this is unbelievable. So they're our favorite band of mine too, but I discovered them much later. But as far as other things I would do in life, I don't have a clue. I mean, because music's always been the center of everything I do, whether it's producing or whether it's drumming or whether it's writing. I love all of it. I love the whole music business, every aspect of it. And so I really can't imagine doing something different.
Awesome. Well,
He bleeds musical notes.
yeah. Well, and your drumming is just unbelievable.
Well, thank you for the kind words.
Yeah,
I appreciate those kind words.
Go watch the videos. I don't know what else to say. They're just that when angels kill, the opening 59 seconds is just epic.
By the record.
I think somebody in the comments was like, drummer beast. Yeah, so, and you're getting a lot of great compliments too. So we're so glad you got to join us and learn more about the new music from Fifth Angel. Remember, the album drops June 16th. Go watch the videos. You will not be disappointed. You guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.